Hi everybody, TJ Mac Vintage Cards and Nostalgia here, and in today's video I'm doing a response to Dylan over at Double D Vintage Cards. Dylan's a great guy. I've enjoyed connecting with him through the community. I just love his passion for the hobby like all of us do and how he displays his cards. He just has a wonderful vintage and growing modern collection as well. I enjoy all his videos and just appreciate his friendship. So Dylan's asking us today to do a VR showing off cards that go together. And if you watch my channel, this is something that I frequently do. It's one of the ways that I express myself as a collector. So the first three cards I'm showing today are from the 69 Topps set. You have Bobby Cox depicted on his rookie card, Billy Martin on his first manager's card, and then Earl Weaver on his rookie card as well. Being he never played in the majors, this is his first card from a Topps issue, and it shows him as manager of the Orioles, which is the team he managed for his entire major league career. Now, these three gentlemen to me are great representations of what I consider to be the golden age of managers in baseball. I was very blessed to be growing up during the 70s and 80s when you just saw these men on full display, and Cox certainly into the 90s as well and into the 2000s. He had quite an extensive career. Now, Bobby Cox was known as a player's manager. There was a story about how back in 1983, the Braves were looking to acquire Cliff Johnson, and there was some concern with how he'd fit in with that team's chemistry. So Cox spoke to the veterans on the team, got their buy-in before going through with the acquisition. Shows you the kind of manager he was, but he also wasn't a pushover as a player's manager. He traded Yunel Escobar, I remember, in 2010 because Escobar wasn't really living up to expectations as far as his ability and skills go. And you'll find with managers like these three, they really had to scrape their way to get any success playing baseball. Like I said, Weaver never even made the majors, and I think they looked upon players that weren't achieving to the level they should as being a disappointment because these guys worked so hard to get to where they got to. And in the case of Martin, he struggled with the prima donna type players like Reggie Jackson. As we know, in 1977, he pulled him out of the game because he thought he was being lazy in the outfield, and they went at it in the dugout. Kind of summarizes his fiery temper and confrontational style. But in the case of Billy Martin, he was just an outstanding field general. He really understood the game, and he wouldn't miss a trick. Like in the case with George Brett, of course, in the Pine Tar incident, he waited to the right moment to call Brett out and go to the umpire, and just kind of manager he was during that time. And it translated to a lot of his success in the majors for him. He took the Twins to a division title as well as the Tigers, Yankees, and A's, and of course won the World Series with the Yankees. Problem was Martin, as we know, is he'd wear out his welcome and wouldn't last in those jobs very long. And Earl Weaver was a short, pudgy little manager. He would get thrown out of games quite a bit. He was thrown out of 96 games in his career. Quite confrontational with the umpires. There's a famous YouTube video, and it was also in the Ken Burns documentary of him going at it with Bill Haller, the umpire, in 1980. And just a very fun video to watch. The umpire's really going off on him, and he's going back and forth with him. And just love that kind of interaction that we really don't see as much anymore in the modern game. And, this is one of those things that, people are more guarded, I think, now than they were years ago in a lot of ways. And these managers all certainly had faults, especially Martin, both on and off the field. But they were characters of the game, made for compelling storylines when they were managing. And I just really enjoyed it. And the distinction that Bobby Cox has is that he was thrown out of 162 games in his over 4,500 games he managed, which is a major league record. Will be difficult to break. I believe he's 41 ahead of second place John McGraw. I was surprised to learn that Martin was only thrown out of 48 games, considering he managed over 2,200. That's not really that many for him. And then in the case of Earl Weaver, he was thrown out of 96 games and just over 2,500 managed. And Weaver, I remember, would get thrown out on purpose, he would say sometimes, just to fire the team up. Just the kind of guy he was. So 3 great cards of managers that were memorable for me growing up. Here we have a 4-card combination. depicting left-handed hitters that I really enjoyed watching growing up. And there are different phases of their at-bat, as you can see here. I started off with the Tony Gwynn, and this is 88 Topps Tiffany, and it's showing the 8-time batting champion getting ready at the plate. Then you have the 7-time batting champion Rod Carew with that memorable stance at the plate as he's getting ready to attack the ball. And then next to him is Wade Boggs, who of course was a 5-time batting champion on his follow-through on his 84 Topps card. And then I finished with the 3-time batting champion George Brett, completing what I would consider a successful at-bat, who knows, by scoring a run, because it looks like they're greeting him at the dugout, or going on his way to the dugout. And what's interesting here is between these 4 players, you have 23 batting titles. I just thought this was an impressive display of 4 lefties, and looks really cool when you see cards like this all together. You can just see the motion of these players, and it just captures things that you remember about them. Love doing stuff like this. One of the cool things about collecting multiple sports is you get to learn about the different characters of the game, and you find that there's some similarities. So here I have a 63 Topps Yogi Berra, and then in the middle is a new pickup, is the 61 Topps Gump Worsley. Picked this up around the time I picked up the 61 Topps Andy Bathgate that I showed last month. And then you have a 56 Topps Art Donovan, and this is a representation, of course, from baseball, hockey, and football. And we all know the funny character that Yogi Berra was and his oft-repeated Yogi-isms. But there was also another character residing in New York, and that's in Gump Worsley here. And he played during the early 50s, late 50s, and early 60s for the Rangers. And Gump was a real character, and I've talked a little bit about him some in the past. And he's one of my favorite players from that era. He was a Hall of Fame goaltender, and he just had some funny antics on the ice. He was very aggressive, and he would be flopping around. And similar to Yogi, he didn't really have an athlete's body, and you'd just be seeing him flopping around the ice and just getting the job done any way he had to. Of course, he never wore a mask, if you know about Gump, and he got whacked in the face many times with the puck and sticks, and he required stitches. He was scared to death of flying, and that, along with the dangers of being a maskless goalie, he ended up retiring from the NHL in 1969. His career started in the early 50s. He retired in 69, but then he returned to the North Stars later in the 69 season. And it's just a really cool card of him here, as you can see, with that nice green background, and you got the large puck in the corner. Goes nicely here with the Yogi, just showing a couple of the big characters of the game. And then next to them you have Art Donovan, of course. For those of you who watched David Letterman in the 80s and 90s, you would have saw Art Donovan interviewed many times. He was an oddly shaped character as well. He played the defensive line for those great Colts teams of the 1950s, more so the later 50s when they won their championships. They were actually a pretty terrible team in the early 50s. And Hall of Fame player as well. And what's really cool about him is he just had a lot of great stories from that era, and just a fun guy to listen to. And he'd be in the locker room and on the sideline eating hot dogs during the game out of a bag. Just one of those characters of the era. And again, you just don't see as much expressiveness anymore as you did back in those days. And I just love having these cards matched up together. Now here's another 4-card combination depicting 4 right-handed players I enjoyed watching. First you have Dave Winfield and his 1987 Topps Tiffany stepping forward in the box. Then you have this beautiful Gary Carter 88 Topps Tiffany. I just love this card. I'm a big fan of this set. Just nice clean photography. And I think it's a combination of the 67 Topps and 66 Topps sets. You got the stripe there, and then the bubble, it's bubble lettering, but the large lettering on the top there, similar to how the 67 Topps set looked. And just a wonderful looking card with the blues and the orange color on it as well. And then next to him you have Robin Yount, 2-time MVP, finishing the swing, and then getting ready to break from the box. You got Steve Garvey depicted here on this 81 Topps card. Nice use of colors here on these 4 cards together, and just depicting cards of players that I enjoyed watching growing up, and I think they just look nice together. So that's all I have for today. I hope everybody enjoyed, and we'll talk again soon.